I have sufficient public speaking experience to know that when you are the last speaker in that afternoon after lunch, it's certainly challenging. I don't know. I had a great time at the cocktail last night. I must have upset one of the organizers. But I will manage. Please bear with me. As Mr. Honorable Chairman, the guests, ladies and gentlemen, so 4.0 is here to stay, and what's the Malaysian perspective? I'm talking to you today from the Malaysian perspective, not from a philosophical point of view or a conceptual point of view. This is real time. The Malaysian government has actually recently implemented several policies and to address the industrial revolution of 4.0 in various sectors of economy, and we say this on a historical backdrop, because as you may or may not know, last year in May 2018, it was unprecedented and historical that the Malaysian public actually outvoted a very strong coalition government of Malaysia that was in power for 60 years. So today we have a new government addressing the challenges of geopolitics, geoeconomics, and geotechnology. The good news, however, is that we have the old Prime Minister back leading the nation. So we have the oldest Prime Minister in the world. I think he's pushing 95. All right. This is what we gather from the World Economic Forum in 2015. That was a few years ago, short of their, another 6 years short of their estimate. And we can already see some of this stuff happening in our country and in yours and around the world. So indeed, it affects humanity, it affects how people work and how people carry about their lives with the new gadgets, and it has actually absorbed into the local way of life. So what we did in Malaysia, and only recently, as I said, is that the Prime Minister has launched a specific policy on industry, and we've done that focusing on the manufacturing sector, because the manufacturing sector provided 23% of our GDP growth in last year, and it has risen by 5.1% over the last year. So we're focusing on the manufacturing sector, and if you can see the box on the right, we are making sure that the drive is continuous growth in manufacturing. So manufacturing is our focus. We want to increase the national productivity. We want to create a high-skilled employment that involves skilled human resource, and we want to raise innovation and capabilities and increase our competitiveness. Now, therefore, Malaysia needs to quickly embrace this Industrial Revolution 4.0 in order to propel productivity and to enhance the future. Because we have somehow streamlined to the manufacturing industry in the industrial perspective, we'll just focus on what we're doing over there. We have our vision, we have set our national goals, and we have identified the shift factors. The shift factors, the third row from the bottom, is very important. You will notice that we identified the people, the processes, and the technology as the major shift factor to make this happen. It's easier said than done, and following identifying the shift factors, we have identified the enablers to make this new policy a reality. Our think tankers have come up with this concentric circle diagram. It's about 3 rings, where the center ring is the hub of the shift factors, and the second ring is the thrust, where we actually execute the policy, and the outer ring determines all the action plans that we can achieve in manufacturing. Then we went ahead and we came up with a measuring rule to determine how well we're doing. So this is very academic, and we are yet to be measured, but as I said, the policy has just started. So we've classified our measurement into conventional practitioners, newcomer, learner, experience, and the leader of Industrial Revolution 4.0 in Malaysia. However, in a recent poll, we find that the majority of Malaysians, even though we started this program with full government support at the beginning of the year, and the majority of Malaysian small, medium enterprises have yet to adopt Industry 4.0, and I wonder why. Because the primary concern by all companies, as it should, is their bottom line. Technology calls for large investments, and investments then need to be measured with rate of returns and time factor in these investments, and the productivity will of course affect activity. We have 500,000 small medium enterprise companies in Malaysia, and we think that this 500,000 companies will actually generate the move towards industrialization 4.0. Now, this problem with bottom line measurement and the balance between investment in new technology to change your systems, your software, your hardware, and how you do things against your bottom line, actually is not just peculiar to a Malaysian problem. In fact, in a recent exhibition in Singapore, as the last paragraph at the bottom would show, that Mr. James Boy of the Singapore Exhibition Private Limited says that this problem actually cuts across the entire, a lot of other countries within ASEAN. So we move now to the defense industry. How is the defense industry going to adjust to this new change? First thing, of course, the defense people sat down and they had to answer three questions to themselves. First, where is Malaysia now in terms of defense? Where do the defense forces need to go? And how are the defense forces going to transform to get there? Now, this is unprecedented. As a resultant of that three questions, the Malaysian government and the Minister of Defence, leading the ministry, has decided to table a Malaysian defence white paper in the Malaysian in the Parliament. Now, why is it unprecedented? Because in the history of Malaysia, in the geopolitical and geostrategic and geoeconomics scenario, the Malaysian government actually never ever had a formal national defense policy. We had a policy which we implemented, but that policy remained as a policy of the Ministry of Defense and not a national defense policy. There were reasons to this in the past, because in ASEAN and the spirit of partnership and to promote economic growth in the region, we didn't want to portray as a country that professes a hostile posture. So, but today, new government have decided that a white paper to Parliament, which will be presented next month actually, will then officiate the national defense policy. Let's talk a little bit about that, how they went about thinking about this. The defense white paper was with the objective of achieving legitimacy and acceptability by the public. Before this, defense planning, defense strategies were all secret and only on need-to-know basis, but we were spending public money to develop force level, and today the new government decided that it has to be transparent. So we asked ourselves the 5 W's and the 1 H, the questions on why and what and who are we doing this for, and as a resultant to this brainstorming session among the smart people in Ministry of Defense, we decided to carve out 3 main principles that will demarcate this new government's policy in defense opposed to what's been happening over the last 60 years. We decided that the defense funding trend, again, the issue of money and finance come into thinking, and its current capabilities. It's no good trying to pick up a concept of force development to meet a perceived threat if you can't really afford it and go to deficit. Now they're trying to be more realistic and be evidence-based. then we have to re-evaluate the threat assessment perceptions. What is the threat today? Do you really need a multi-role aircraft and drop smart bombs on critical targets to win a war and take over a certain country or achieve an objective? Or anything with algorithms today is a defense threat. You can switch off the electrical supply or water supply of a nation and maybe take over the country without firing a single shot. So these are the issues that they were thinking about conceptually. But the most important thing about Malaysia today is that they decided to be transparent with defense. They decided that the public need to know what they're doing and what they're thinking. So the policy would involve the whole of government and the whole of society, hence the national defense policy. Why are they doing this? Because we have identified a serious evolution in defense. The governance and professionalism and accountability need to be specified. As it is today, in the past, Malaysian Armed Forces, we buy anything from anyone. And in the Air Force, for example, we fly Russians, we fly American, we fly British aircraft, we fly Italians. So we don't know what was the concept behind this. This concept opening, it creates logistical nightmare, it creates financial implications. So this time around, the government wants to create a benchmark on the principles of openness and get the nation to participate. We will then be able to position Malaysia globally, and we will then decide the contribution that we can give for global defense or regional defense security. This is a chart to show the evolution of our defense policies. Times changes, wars and strategic environment changes. You see, after the Cold War and the post-war Cold War in 1993, the NDP decided to swing to academic, social, and political aspects. They had trouble balancing these three. As you picked up in one of the speakers earlier this morning, it is a fine balance between geopolitics, geoeconomics, and geotechnology. In 2010, they decided to freeze the NDP for a while because they didn't know where the world was going and they were not sure where they were going. And today, in 2019, they decided to capture this officially in Parliament and make it an official national defense policy. In doing this, we engage in two tracks of effort. The first track, as you can see from the top chart, started a bunch of policy writers got together and they started a work series from January this year. And the second dot on the right in October is when we're going to present to Parliament next month. Track 2 was very interesting. While the team in Track 1 was writing up this policy, Track 2 was engaging in a lot of dialogue with academics, with government, with retired personnel, with military, with industry. There were a lot of town halls and dialogue sessions where all these points were captured. And so we're all looking forward to this presentation in Parliament next month. What comes out of Parliament will then be official. It's not official right now. But I'll give you a snapshot on where the military is going with this. With the advancement of technology, we thought that we should focus on our real role and objectives to defend the nation and review the assets that we need. The Air Force, for example, came up with a catch tune called CAP 55, Capability 55, which means what are the capabilities that we want by 2055. And they've identified that they want only 2 squadron of fighters. They want only 2 types of long-range and medium-range transport aircraft. They want only 2 types of helicopters to do specific roles. At the moment, we have a smorgasbord of different types of aircraft, as I told you earlier, from different suppliers. They want one squadron of radar and a GBAT squadron for self-defense. More importantly, they have included one squadron of UAVs, unmanned vehicles, and one squadron of airborne early warning, and one squadron of maritime patrol, because we are a maritime nation. The yellow line at the bottom is very important. IR 4.0 is not just the technology bit, it's also the human capital, and you have to actually develop a development of your doctrine and your alignment to the organization. We have to admit, and in the case of Malaysia, we have not been able to synchronize all these elements. We've gone ahead in one direction based on the threat scenario, and then we're left behind on another direction on the other domestic affairs like economics and social standings. I think I should stop at there. It's just to give you a snapshot of where we're going. We can't really tell you what's going to happen until the Parliament approves this paper next month. But as I said, none of this is conceptual and none of this is philosophical anymore. We actually know what's happening, and we are now taking the necessary action. What comes in the future by 2025, then we will actually see the outcome. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Akhtar.